Hello, and you're very welcome to today's special Signpost webinar, where we meet some of Ireland's most sustainable farmers. We have an action-packed hour ahead of us, and as always, you can ask us your questions using the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. And today's session is being recorded and will be available on the Teagasc YouTube channel, as well as a podcast version. So let's meet some of our winners of the recent Teagasc FBD Environmental Sustainability Awards. We're first joined by Siobhán Kavanagh, who is one of the main organisers behind the awards. We are also joined by Edwin Thompson, a farmer in Tipperary, dairy farmer, winner of Reducing the Greenhouse Gas Emissions category. Ken Gill as a suckler farmer in County Offaly, and is winner of Enhancing Biodiversity category. And Martin Crowe, who's a dairy farmer in Limerick, is winner of the Improving Water Quality category. And finally, James O'Keefe from County Meath as a tillage farmer there, who won the Improving Soil Health and Carbon Sequestration category. So you're all very, very welcome. We're also joined by Noel Meehan, who is head of the Agricultural Sustainability Support Programme, also known as ASSAP, who was involved in the programme, and Ruth Wilson, who's farmland pollinator officer with the National Biodiversity Centre. So you're all very, very welcome to this morning's webinar. As I said, we have an action-packed hour ahead of us. We're going to hear about the different stories of each of our winners here this morning, and we'll have time for questions after each session. So Siobhán, you're going to give us a little overview of the awards and what was involved in the process, and hopefully from today we can inspire others to think about applying to next year's awards as well. So Siobhán, I know you've been involved in the development of these awards for some time. Perhaps you could just tell us about this year's competition and some of the outcomes. You're on mute, Siobhán.
That would help, all right. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Mark. So the Teagasc FBD Environmental Sustainability Awards 2024, this is the first year of those awards, and I would just firstly want to thank FBD for sponsoring these awards, because that has been really important to us to be able to run a programme like this, to get that support from FBD. So just to thank them for that. So the main aim of these awards really is to promote environmentally sustainable farming, but also to give recognition, and most importantly, to give recognition to farmers that are going to a huge effort to improve the sustainability of their farm. And what we really wanted to do with this program was to show that you can be technically efficient and profitable while at the same time looking after the environment. And that was hugely important in this program, that the two were very much aligned, that we were achieving both. So to promote sustainable farming was the second component of the programme, and that was, I suppose, to get out to a wider audience what some of these farmers are doing, and to be inspired by the stories from these farmers. And as you'll see later on this morning, there's really inspiring stories amongst these farmers, and it's to encourage other farmers, but even also the general public, to be aware that farmers are working hard to improve the sustainability of their systems. So I suppose farmers were judged on a couple of different levels. They were judged on the basis, obviously, of their technical efficiency and their profitability. That was fundamental to all of the winners on the awards. They were also then judged on the four key pillars of environmental sustainability. So that's reducing greenhouse gas emissions, enhancing biodiversity, improving water quality, and improving soil health and carbon sequestration potential. So basically there was 5 categories that farmers were judged on. Our judging panel then was made up of a number of internal people in Teagasc, but also external. So I was chair of the judging panel. We also had Bernard Hyde, who's with the EPA, and he's part of the team that's responsible for the National Inventory for Agriculture. So he was responsible for, I suppose, judging the GHG component of the judging procedure. Ruth Wilson is from the National Biodiversity Data Centre, and she was looking after enhancing biodiversity. And then Noel Meehan was looking after water quality and soil health. And we also had Mary Dunphy from FBD on the panel. We also had enterprise leaders, so we had specific leaders in areas in terms of judging, but we also had the enterprise leaders, so Stuart Childs on dairy, Kieran Lynch on sheep, Catherine Egan on beef, and Shay Phelan Sheffield on Tillage. So we were very fortunate. We had 101 entries for this, for a new program. I think we were very pleased with that number of entries on the program. And there was a screening process where we brought that back down to 16. We visited 16 farmers during the summer, and that was fundamental to these awards, that we actually got out on the farm and could see what the farmers are doing, because there's only so much you pick up from the paperwork, and we were all well armed with plenty of data from all these farms. To actually see what's happening on the ground was very insightful. And I think it was
your visits to those farms, Siobhán. What would you did you observe any interesting activities out there? I know you mentioned
I think
diverse enterprises.
Yeah, so the basics were all really, really good. So in terms of technical efficiency, production, all of that was exceptionally good. A couple of things, I suppose, that we noted. We saw really good use of the decision support tools that are available to us now. And data was central to a lot of what these farmers were doing. They were really using the data that was available to them. So tools like AgNav, pasture-based GPS equipment for improving the accuracy of fertilizer spreading, the use of their pit maps to identify maybe where the challenges were on their farms in terms of water quality, the use of NMP, the use of ICBF, the use of CBV to buy calves when dairy beef farmers were going out. So they're the tools, I thought, that really stood out, the exceptional use of the tools that we have available to us. A couple of other things, like there was a lot of these farmers were doing something a little bit different. They were diversifying, or they were improving their sustainability in other ways apart from the 4 categories that we talked about there. So say, for example, James, who's on this call, he's built up a really good market for miscanthus bedding. When other people were ploughing or taking miscanthus out, he's built up a really good market for it and a demand for it. We had farmers that that are putting in agroforestry. So our sheep winner, Brian Nicholson, is putting in agroforestry only in the next couple of weeks, actually. We farmers with PV solar panels selling into the grid. James was one of those. We farmers using biomass boilers to dry grain, rainwater harvesting. So our overall winners, the Walshes, were harvesting rain, and I think they were only turning on the tap 3 times a year because of their capacity now to capture that rainwater. We had very good conservation programs, like the pools in Wexford had really good conservation programs. And then there was plans like there was Lady Blonde Gallagher in Wicklow, or sorry, in Galway, was building up markets for Galway sheep, or for Galway lamb. So there was a lot of different things going on these farms. And what was really noteworthy, and I think it was noteworthy the night of the award ceremony on the 1st of October, was the number of farmers that actually had forestry. And when we counted them up, I'd say out of the 16 finalists, was 8 or 9 of them had forestry on their farms, which I thought was quite interesting. There was collaboration was very obvious on a few farms, and one that really stood out for me was Aidan McGuire. He built up a really good relationship with the dairy farmers that he was buying his calves from. So he had great confidence in the genetics and the quality of the calves that he was buying in terms of their health, but and probably as important or more important, the genetics of them. So Aidan was actually having an input into the selection of the straws that were going to be the beef straws, the DBI animals that were going to be used. And I think that's something that we could learn from. Like that was a great story in my view. Other things in terms of collaboration, tillage farmers working very closely with dairy and pig farmers to get organic manures. In James's case there, I'm sure James will talk about it later on, he's producing red clover silage for another farmer and taking back in the organic manure. So there are collaborations like that. And I think what was really obvious was these were all family farms, and they were enjoying what they were doing. Like there was great pride, huge commitment, and dedication to what they were doing, but they were getting well-being benefits also from what was happening on their farm in terms of improving their environmental sustainability.
Brilliant. Well, that gives us a really good overview of the program. I've been involved in a few competitions myself over the years as a judge, and I have to say it's always an inspiring exercise to go out on farms and see the amazing work that's being done by our food producers across the country. So let's move on to the next stage of this morning. We're going to take a look at the individual categories. Siobhán, you were involved in the reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Do you want to say a few words about what you were looking for at that point during that under that category?
Yeah, so just throw just one single slide here just to highlight maybe what were we looking for when we were looking for the GHG winner. So just maybe to say before I go on to that, Mark, we had 5 enterprise winners. So dairy, suckler beef, dairy beef, sheep, and tillage. They were the enterprise winners, and then there was 4 category winners, which is they're the farmers that we're meeting here this morning. So for the reducing greenhouse gas emissions, the areas that we were looking for were really the technologies that are in the MAC 2023. So what are the technologies there that we know will help us to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions? And I suppose the obvious ones that are ones like reducing chemical nitrogen. And within that, then we were focusing on soil fertility. Did the farmer have a high level of soil fertility, and have worked hard on that? The establishment of clover on the farm, what use they were making of slurries on the farm, and the precision of fertilizer spreading. So that was all around that reducing chemical nitrogen. Aged slaughter, we know, is one of the big technologies to reduce emissions. So the actual reduction in aged slaughter, but also things like buying calves and using the CBV value, or for dairy farmers using high DBI bulls with a high beef subindex. So it was a combination of, actually the reduction in aged slaughter, but also the things that drive that reduction in aged slaughter. Obviously, animal performance was really important. So milk solids, beef output, lamb output, tillage output. The use of protected urea, so the NBPT protected urea, so the use of that on farms where that was relevant, obviously not on the organic farms, but making sure that was at a high level and being maximised on farm, and particularly that it was the protected urea that's been incorporated or recognised in the national inventory. Then other things like diversification. So say example in Brian Nicholson's farm, he was putting in agroforestry. So what are changes made to the system maybe in terms of diversification over the last couple of years? Obviously breeding and genetics was really important. They will drive reductions, drive animal performance and reduction in aged slaughter. Maximising days of grass was important, and maximising the use of grass and the quality of grass silage. And 2 things that we probably have added in more into our 12 steps, which is basically the distillation of the MAC down into something that's practical. We've included now better management of hedges and planting of trees, and that's to recognise the carbon sequestration potential of these to reduce our emissions. And then obviously on tillage farms, things like straw incorporation, catch crops, legumes. So it's really about the adoption level of these technologies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That's what our main focus was. And they're the main ones that we dealt with on the day of our visit to the farm.
Thank you, Siobhán. That gives a really good oversight of what or view of what you were the lens you were looking at these farms through. So now we're going to have a look at each of our individual farmers. So Edwin, thanks for joining us this morning. We have a short video that you prepared with our colleague Declan, and so I'd ask Yvonne if you could play that video for us now, and we'll take some questions afterwards.
My name is Edwin Thompson. I'm married to my wife Diane. I have 3 boys, teenage boys. I'm farming here in Golden, County Tipperary, the heart of the Golden Vale, milking 160 cows, farmed on about 86 hectares. When we first joined the Signpost program, we identified areas that we could improve on. So we immediately reseeded some land and we got some clover going. We currently have about 50% of the farm growing in clover or multi-species. I have the tractor set up with GPS, so we're driving very accurately. We're spreading about 40 to 50% of what we used to spread of the chemical nitrogen, and all of that chemical nitrogen is spread in a protected form. We've reduced our chemical nitrogen last year to about 110 units of nitrogen per hectare. I walk the farm here on a weekly basis. I use a combination of plate meter and eyeball in it. We're picking beef sires that have a high CBV value. This gives the beef man a better animal. He knows now that when he goes to the market to buy an animal, that this animal will perform for him. We're quite happy to leave a little bit of land for nature, for the environment, hedges, ponds, reed beds. We're not obsessed here with farming every square inch of the land. We're quite happy to leave areas. We used to keep the hedges neatly trimmed and manicured, but now we're trying to leave them escape and grow and produce flowers and cover and food for wildlife and for birds. I love getting up in the morning and heading over to the farm and planning my day. For me, there's no stress involved, there's no traffic. I'm out in the countryside, working with beautiful animals, making a good living. It doesn't get much better.
Well, Edwin, sounds like you're living the dream.
Good morning, Mark. Yes.
Good morning to you. Your congratulations on winning the category. It was a great achievement, and you know, we know you're not a stranger to the Signpost program. We spoke, I think, last year. Edwin, for those people watching this morning, and I'm sure very keen to understand what drives you to make these changes on your farm, and to be farming more sustainably. What would you say is the main driver for you?
Oh, I suppose, Mark, every farmer is concerned with the environment and water quality, and these little things play on our minds a little bit. And I feel if we can all do a little bit to improve our own situation and then consequently improve the dairy industry as a whole, make it a greener, more environmentally friendly perspective for everybody. And I just feel strongly about that. And when I was asked to join Signpost, it excited me to enter it and try a few of these measures and see how we get on.
What would you say are the main changes that you have observed, you know, since you've embarked upon this journey on the farm?
The main changes we've really chased clover. That's the big change. So we know that you have to supply nitrogen to the grass, be it in a chemical form or in a natural form like clover. So we got the clover going. We focused on our soil fertility, the P's, the K's, pH, and that gives the soil and the grass, or gives the clover a good chance to get established and get going. And then gradually we just reduced the nitrogen over a period of a couple of years, and slowly pulling the nitrogen, and you're maintaining your grass growth rates pretty successfully with the use of clover, and keeping the rest of the soil fertility fairly right. You know, the P's and K's, like I said.
Excellent. So, I mean, it's obviously, you know, as a dairy farmer, you're a busy person. I mean, do you find that chasing and striving to achieve greater sustainability is adding to your workload? Siobhán talked about the different tools and the data and so on. Is it something that I often wonder, how do you manage it all?
Yeah, no, it doesn't really. I wouldn't say it added to my workload. You know, I used to follow the old-fashioned Teagasc blueprint, where we'd go out with a bag of, or half a bag of urea or a bag of can after every paddock was grazed. And I'm finding now that with 50% of the farm in clover, I don't have to spread as much fertilizer, so I spend a lot less time spreading my chemical nitrogen. I've kind of gone back to the once a month or once every rotation, just top up the fields that need it, the non-clover fields. The clover fields are kind of left alone for a lot of it. So there's labor saved there. And then, so when I save labor there, I'm just spending more time sort of maybe walking the farm, grass measuring and things like that, which is always beneficial. You know, you're hitting your paddocks at the right growth stage, and you're taking out surpluses and all those sort of things that are conducive to good dairy farming.
Very good. And for those farmers who are maybe at the early stage of the journey, we'll say, to improve their sustainability, what advice would you offer to them?
Oh, well, first of all, you've got to get your soil fertility right. That's the first thing. Do a soil analysis and fix any P's, K's, pH. Get those right, and then start off with just one paddock. Get your clover going, and concentrate on that. And then the second year, just try and get another paddock going. It's a cumulative effect. The more clover you have on growing on your farm, the easier it becomes. You know, so for me now, I'm 50-60%, and it's that's a lot easier than having 10% of your farm in clover. You know, the cows are more used to it. There's a lot less. They're used to the clover, so there's less effect on them. Also, for me, then I've less, because half the farm's already in clover. It sort of minds itself. There's less work in that. But just the starting point is, for me, would be, don't be too worried about the clover. Get your P's and K's right, a small little bit of reseeding, and take it from there.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, Edwin, we are tight on time this morning, and so that has given us a great overview and some insights into how you're operating there in Golden. So congratulations again to you and your family, and no doubt we'll meet you again at some point. But look, do stay with us. We'll have time for questions at the end. So I'm now going to invite Ruth Wilson from the National Biodiversity Data Centre to join us to give us an overview of the biodiversity category, enhancing biodiversity. Good morning, Ruth.
Good morning.
So, Ruth, you had a tough task to try and assess the biodiversity side of things. Can you tell us about some of the things you were looking out for at a farm level?
Yeah, there were, as I think you've really said, there was, each farm was individual, and also, it's wonderful to meet the farmers and how well they knew their farms, so hedges always come up as a top feature for biodiversity, and we did see some wonderful hedges, and that they, were actually, looking at how they can manage them better. A lot of talk about letting them go up and out, which is wonderful. And also, that there's flower in the hedge as well for pollinators and biodiversity.
Excellent.
And other features as well. Some had created, habitat for species, bats and birds, as well as, and they were quite interested in the banks for the solitary bees as well. There was quite a few of those on the farm. So yeah, it was very good.
Brilliant, brilliant. When you're going onto a farm, Ruth, what's the first thing you look out for? What normally strikes you as a positive from a biodiversity point of view?
Yeah, I think when you drive into a farm, you can get a feel for, just what is going on, even the entrance and stuff. And yeah, just again, it's back to the hedges, is it? That you do notice it's such a feature on our farms, and that's really a very important semi-natural habitat. So sorry, I'm a bit hedge biased this morning, but yes, hedge, and also the margins as well, how important they are, and that's again for the health of the hedge, letting that wee bit of space for nature as well, and also that the wildflowers can develop there as well, which just provides more habitat throughout the year.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, I know you've probably covered most of what you had on the slide, or do you want to share the details of those slides? You have some nice photographs, don't you, of Ken Gill's farm?
Yes, I'll run through those quickly, just a wee overview. Can you see that okay?
Yes, perfect.
Again, yeah, just when we went onto the farms, it was looking at the field size as well, and the wee bit of information they gave us before we went, just to see what their boundaries were like. And then we were looking at the hedgerows, a wee mixture, of tree-lined and maintained hedges, and that the hedges, were allowed to grow up nearly to 2 meters above the bank as well. Just looking for a mix in the hedge as well, native species, and that flowers were present, and that can also tell in the management of the hedge. And if you've just a longer rotation in the cut, that you'll get flowers in the hedge. They wouldn't develop unwell, maintained every year hedges. Excellent. And the shape of the hedges, and really that there's trees present in the hedge. Also, just on the drain management, water and open drains, that livestock don't have access to the water sources on the farm in the form of water and open drains and riparian margins. And then, that the water courses as well, that they're fenced off if necessary. I'm having trouble just moving that on. Here we go. And then the boundaries and the non-water courses as well. I mentioned about how important margins can be within the field, benefits the hedge, and also that wee bit more habitat around the field and the operations in the field. And so that they're managed as well and not sprayed, managed with a cut and left or grazed off. At the end of the year, just helps it from developing thatch and will help it become more flower rich. And then other actions as well. We just did a wee check on invasive alien species and their rodent control. And also I mentioned about the habitats as well that were created. Also looking at other features as well, some extensively managed grassland, some lovely individual trees on the farms was fantastic to see, native woodland and traditional orchards, and wetlands and pond features within the farm. And also we just had a wee chat to the farmer, on his knowledge of biodiversity on the farm and what actions he was taking. And just if there was any designated sites that he was had on his land as well. So that's a wee overview of what we were looking for. And on Ken's farm, Ken's up next then, and he won the Biodiversity Award. But this was his hedges. He had fenced them out, lovely species-rich hedgerows, and he had was developing margins. But very nice, and he'd tell you more about his hedges, but yeah, very good. And he had created a lovely area of new hedge. I think it's 3 or 4 years old now, and it was doing very well. He was letting the weeds grow around it, which was lovely to see, another habitat feature. He wasn't too worried about that. He had a lovely grass margin on his tillage fields as well, which was lovely to see. And another feature just on Ken's farm was a pasture area that he very much valued for resilience. So he'll tell us a wee bit more about that. And he had included some new trees that were protected, and he'd left some deadwood, which was lovely to see. Mm-hmm. So excellent. I'd let Ken tell you more.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Ruth. That gives us a really good overview of that category and some of the things that Ken was implementing. Good morning, Ken. How are you today?
Good, thanks.
Great. Thanks for joining us this morning. We're going to show a short clip that was featured in the awards, and we'll maybe get into have a discussion after that. So I'll ask Siobhán to share your video.
My name is Ken Gill. I'm an organic beef and tillage farmer here in Clonbelogue in County Offaly. I have about 90 hectares and I've run 60 to 65 suckler cows and an autumn calving suckler herd. One of the changes I made when I converted to organics was to go 100% autumn calving, and it's been one of the best decisions I made. There's a couple of advantages. One is the cows go in October, and they're very easy then to see and keep an eye on for 100% AI. 100% AI has probably transformed the herd more than anything else. Picking bulls for replacement, but also picking bulls for terminals. Their heifer calves are coming along. They're well able to calve at 2 years of age. My rotation is red clover and oats, but also to break the sod, it goes into a turnip, rape and kale in the autumn. For me, that's a great saving. It leaves my store cattle out for November, well into December, and that's a huge saving. So if I had to pick 3 things that I've been doing on the farm that have really kind of made a difference to the environment, one would certainly be the hedge management and the field boundary management. So allowing the hedges to grow, making sure that there's plenty of flowering plants in it. Something that isn't often talked about from a biodiversity point of view is that the biodiversity that's underneath the soil. And that comes from me, part of it is rotation, that breaks that up, but getting it back into grassland, but also leaving roughly 1/3 of the farm in old permanent pasture that has that incredible biodiversity going on underneath the soil. So I've planted a lot of trees, I've always loved trees, so I've always been lucky enough to have an old semi-natural woodland there, and I'm managing that in a way that is coppice with standards, and that's something that really is something that's a sight to behold. If you look at the list that Teagasc have of 12 things to reduce your gas emissions on the farm, 10 of them only affect me because 2 of them are to do with spreading fertiliser, which I don't do. But there's not one of those things on that list, I feel, that aren't good for the environment, but also good for your bottom line.
Lovely video there, Ken. Very
Thanks.
great overview of your farm. Beautiful place, by the way, and congratulations to you on winning the category, the biodiversity category. Look, you talked about some of the changes that you've made on the farm, and I really liked the way you talked about the soil biodiversity, which we don't really talk about enough, I think. What motivated you to really start to explore that more?
I suppose being organic, it's probably something a little bit different than some of the other guys. But when you're in organics, the kind of rule of thumb always is feed the soil, not the crop. So you're planning ahead all the time. You're trying to do something that's going to make the soil right for the crop that's coming. So part of that is the way you work your rotations and stuff. Part of that is with the red clover, it's a hungry crop, but you feed it a lot. But that means with the nitrogen it puts back in the ground, plus the amount you fed it with slurry and dung during the year, it's then ready to produce your crop of oats and stuff. So yeah, as I said in the thing, ploughing it does break up that wonderful sort of system that's going on in the soil, but it also releases a lot of nutrients to you. And then when it goes back into grass again, that's all there, and it definitely seems to help the thing continue to grow during the course of its full lifetime.
Okay, so you find ploughing it supports that.
It breaks the stuff up, but it's there, and definitely your reseeds will be more productive than your older swords. I mean, I grant that. So I say I've roughly a third in old swords, 2/3 will be over the course of its life will be either in the rotation or be reseeded. But yes, the reseeds are a bit more productive, but the other swords do a lot for me as well.
We talked about, and you talked about some of the points there that the key changes that you've made. What advice would you offer to other farmers who are on the sustainability journey or thinking about going on it?
Yeah, I was very interested just to hear Edwin there on before, because he could almost have been an organic farmer the way he's thinking and the way he's talking.
Yes.
Because, and that's for me, I'm only 10 years organic, but a lot of the stuff that was completely new to me 10 years ago is becoming a bit mainstream. Red clover, cover crops, not leaving your stubble ground bare. All of those things were basics for organic farmers, but I see them coming in more and more in conventional. And I think that's good, because all of that is good for biodiversity, and it's good for sustainability as well. So yeah, I think there's been a lot of positives in the last while.
And what are your plans for the future, Ken? Any changes that on the horizon?
Nothing major, because to be honest, I've spent 10 years getting a system that kind of works for me, and I'm happy enough with where I am. Both definitely the improvements now are even more improvements in the breeding side. To try and shave even a month, like at this stage, I calve in the autumn. I'm selling at 24 months, which is good, what you're aiming for, but 23 months would be even better. And if I could shave a month and still make the weights and still make the grades, and that would be primarily down to breeding, but also partly down to grassland management. But those two things would help. If I could shave a month, it would really make a difference.
And finally, Ken, just in terms of the broader challenges around farming, what do you see coming down the tracks there for you as a farmer? What kind of
I mean, look, everybody knows it's been a weird autumn, weather-wise, and I think we are probably in for more just unusual weather. It mightn't be that extreme, but definitely different and unusual. And for that, you need flexibility, and you need it built into your system that if you get a lot of growth at different times of the year, you can handle that. And I think that more organic matter in your soil, it kind of stops it drying out during dry periods. That sort of thing, that we just have more flexibility in the system going
That's
forward.
really sound advice, and building that resilience and being adaptive to the new weather patterns that we're getting. Ken, thank you so much for showcasing your farm, allowing us to visit, and congratulations again to you and your family. And no, we'll catch you towards the end of this morning if we have some time at the end to ask any audience questions. And a reminder to everybody that Q&A tab is at the bottom of your screen there. Please do send us questions if you have any particular questions for any of our winners this morning. Ken, thanks again. And
Thanks, Mark.
now I'm going to ask Noel Meehan, who's head of the Teagasc ASSAP program. Good morning, Noel. How are you today?
I'm good, Mark. How are you keeping?
Great, I'm very good. So Noel, you were involved and leading up the water quality category. Do you want to maybe share some points that you were looking out for when you were visiting the farms? And I see Martin is joining us as well. Good morning, Martin.
I have a few points on how we assess the farms here.
Yes, yes. So if you want to share those with us, Noel,
Yeah.
we'll move swiftly through them because we are getting a little bit tight on time.
Yeah, no problem at all. The share is there now, so hopefully that's sharing okay, Mark. Everybody can
Yes.
see it. So look at, I suppose, the water element was obviously a key part of the whole assessment, and what the way we framed it was we wanted to get an overall picture of what the farmers' knowledge was of water quality on their farms, and not alone water quality, but what was the drivers behind it, what were the ways of measuring it, what are the things that you could use to help you make those decisions around water quality, the mitigation actions, and then how well you were doing with regards to the regulations that are out there. So I suppose the first question we were asking farmers is, how is river water quality rated, and what's it like in their local farm, in their local area? So we were trying to get a feel, to understand about the Water Framework Directive and the targets within that, and maybe the National River Basin Management Plan, and then looking at how do we measure water quality around macroinvertebrates and chemical sampling and so on, and then bring it down to their local river. What's the status in their local river? We also wanted to know, did they know what pit maps were, and how were they used and where they came from? So what was the background information? Did they have access to the maps, and what were they looking, and what were they showing, and how did you interpret them? And then what did they say from the point of view of how nutrients are lost to water? So not your ordinary everyday kind of stuff the farmers would know, but that was the kind of standard that we felt was required on this. And then once you had your PIP maps, can you use those in your farm and apply them to your farm? So was your farm a phosphorus or nitrogen risky farm?
No, you'll have to tell us what pit maps are in case people aren't aware of what they are.
That's fair enough, Mark. I'm maybe presuming too much, but pit maps are a key tool that has been developed by the EPA. And they show their map for the whole country, and what they do is they provide farmers with information around whether their farm is risky for phosphorus loss and associated overland flow pathways. So how water moves across the landscape and into the drainage network, and then if it's not phosphorus, is it a nitrogen risky area? So we know that the south and east of the country primarily is a nitrogen risky area, and again, just to use those maps to highlight areas of the farm where there's greater risk of nutrient loss or contaminant losses to the drainage network. So yeah, so look, that's what the PIP maps are, and I suppose what we were trying to do with the farmers was, did they understand these? Because these are a key tool that we use in the ASSAP program, and that should be used across the whole country to manage the risk around nutrient loss, and then just tie it into your own farm, whether it's a phosphorus risky or a nitrate risky farm, and then based on this, what are the mitigation actions that you would take on your farm to prevent that from happening? So bringing it right down from policy, targets, measuring, what's the tools available, and then what can you do on your farm? So the nitrogen mitigation measures around nitrogen surplus and cover and catch crops and so on, and then for phosphorus and sediment and pesticides, you're looking at breaking the pathway and trying to prevent it from getting from the field into the drain and into the river. And then the final piece was around slurry storage and soil water, and have they got basic compliance? Do they understand the rules and regulations? And are they taking any measures above and beyond the regulations to make their farm more resilient? Ken mentioned there about climate change and the different weather patterns. And we saw that this time last year. We had a very wet autumn and a very wet spring, and a lot of farmers, who would have had the required amount of soil storage were still in bother because weather conditions weren't suiting. So do we have that resilience built into the system to deal with adverse weather conditions around that? So they were the kind of the areas that we were looking at. And I mean, across the 16 finalists, they all were doing their bit on it. Some were doing better than others. But I think the key thing from my point of view is that, the farmers that were getting advice either through an ASSAP or through the Signpost or through their own advisor were the guys that were doing that little bit more and understood it better. So I think that's that farmer, that advisory interaction and getting that information out there is a key part. So that's really it from me, Mark, on that, and maybe Martin might be the man to talk to now.
Thank you, Noel. Thanks, and that gives a really good idea and good advice for people as well for the things they should be looking out for on their own farm. So good morning, Martin. How are you today?
I'm good, Mark, and thank you.
Great, and thanks for joining us this morning. I think before we go any further, we'll have to look at the video of your farm and your entry for the awards. Congratulations to you and your family on your win, and look forward to we'll have a chat after the video. So I'll ask Yvonne to roll the video for us.
My name is Martin Crowe. I'm a dairy farmer here from Doon in County Limerick. We're milking 200 British region cows here. I've heard it was established back in the 50s by my grandfather even. A family of 5 children here with us. They're my wife Jo and Roisin, Nadine, Padraig, Dermot and Cormac. We're very proud of our cows here. EBI is an important factor in selecting our bulls. We're using sex semen here now for the last 3 years, and we target the cows we want to get our replacement stock off of, and all the other cows then get beef straws on the dairy beef index. So we have 2 farmers here that take all our beef calves off us in the springtime, and they're very happy with the CPV values. We're targeting 6.3 to 6.5 of pH on all our soils here, and index 3 for P and K. And all of the milking platform is almost at that now at this stage. We've incorporated an awful lot of clover on the farm here over the last 4 years. We're constantly stitching in more and more clover. We're getting a lot of benefit out of that. So that's helped us reduce our requirement for chemical nitrogen. 6 or 7 years ago, I planted a hedgerow and I planted trees. And for the money I did it, but I mean, that scheme is long since finished. And I'm pure delighted with my trees and my hedgerows. 800 metres of hedgerows planted in the last couple of years. We've changed our hedgerow management then as well of our existing hedgerows. We're now, instead of the box hedge where we thought was lovely all the years going back, we're now letting those hedges grow up. There's a lot of water streams here at home, at the home farm and the outside farm, and we have them all fenced off 5 feet back from the top of the bank, and then we have an exclusion zone outside that for slurry and chemical fertiliser that we don't go inside. We also have a settlement ponds then coming off from the water coming off the farmyards and that, so the grey water there, we try and catch as much sediment coming from the yards. I constructed a pond 3 years ago as well as part of the Mulcare EIP programme, and we're very happy with that as well. Mark Little, formerly of RT, put a very good question one time. He says, what will you say to your grandchildren in 20 years' time when they ask you, Grandad, what did you do? So in 20 years, please God, I will have grandchildren, and I'd like to be able to tell them that we did this and this to secure their future.
Lovely. Looks like you've plenty of help there as well, Martin. I was going to ask you the question, how do you do it all? Because I know you're also working as an agricultural consultant during whatever time you have left over from the farming here.
I've only got stuff here to desk to get after when I get off the call, Mark. Yeah, but no, I've a very good man with me. Dermot Cummins is with me for the last 15 years, and in fairness to him, he's brilliant. So I've been blessed that way. I have great, and my own family help out great as well. So yeah, we've a good team around us, so that helps.
Excellent. And what would you say is the main driving force for you to implement these measures? I know, and you quoted Mark Little there at the end.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was it was very telling to me when I heard him on the radio one morning say that, asking that question, and I mean, they put it to me I suppose when my own family started appearing on the scene, I became more aware of my future or their future, or what future they will have, and even as it is, you see the climate change going on, you question what future do they have, in 50 years' time, what will they? But I mean, that made me more aware of it, I suppose. And And then as the knowledge, the learning, I mean, it said I was an agricultural consultant there, doing shared training courses for acres and different things. You become more aware of what's around you. And I think that was a big factor for me. The more I learned, the more aware I was and to implement these things. And also then the schemes there, I've been involved in every environmental scheme going all the way back to reps. I got paid to do all these measures. I was involved in the Mulcare EIP and I have the ASSAP advisor, local Aquila out to me there about the water EIP program as well. And I'm going to be joining that scheme as well. Like, I mean, and all those things are for environmental good and water quality. Like, so, and they're no load to carry either. Like, and we'd be quite happy with your measures afterwards, looking back at them, you know.
What would you say were the biggest challenges you faced along the way, Martin? And I'm not suggesting you're at the end of the journey, but
I'm not at the end of the, definitely not at the end of the journey. We're going along. What's the biggest challenge, I suppose, is the time to go and do these measures, I suppose. And I suppose you're putting yourself out there. Like, I mean, you know, digging a pond or digging these settlement ponds, whatever. You know, it's new, it's different. You know, if your neighbours are looking over the ditch, you know, what's Martin at today? Like, you know, but I mean, that doesn't bother me at all because at this stage, because the farmers are more talking about it, like, and you know, get people talking about these things, very important too. Like, so yeah, it's the time, I suppose, at the start and the effort that goes into doing these things. Like, I mean, as you said earlier, I'm busy enough. Like, so yeah.
Excellent. In terms of the sort of broader scale, we touched on it with Ken earlier on about what do you see as the big challenges facing farmers like yourself over the next number of years from a sustainability point of view? We know that, you know, a lot of farmers, you could argue that the low hanging fruit is being reaped. I mean, what would you say are the next things that you will need to focus?
Well, I suppose we have the ongoing challenge of water quality. Anyway, Mark, that's to me is a big challenge for us. Like, I mean, while I'm not a derogation farmer, I'm quite close to it, and it's very important for us to retain our derogation. But I mean, we have an effort, we have a job of work to do in order to improve water quality from a farming perspective. So that's a big challenge for us. Like, I mean, and maybe the greenhouse gas emissions one, then the 25% target is a challenge for us to achieve. Like, and we have a lot of work to do in that area as well to get there. Like, I mean, they're the big environmental, I suppose. Biodiversity loss then, like, I mean, is the third one. Like, and that's a challenge as well. Like, but I mean, I think people become more aware of the biodiversity, the importance of biodiversity, and I mean, hedgerow management and that, which I mentioned a number of times earlier, is changing slowly. Like, but I mean, there's a mindset there that has to go overcome as well. Like, where these nice, tidy, clean hedges and, you know, are let grow up. And I think it was Edwin Ken had a hedgerow there, a new hedgerow planted, and all the weeds and stuff inside in the middle of it. Like, and it was lovely. Like, but I mean, that wouldn't be acceptable in a lot of farms even still. Like, but I mean, that mindset change has to come. Like,
yeah, no doubt about it. And finally, Martin, you have a good eye. You're working as an agricultural consultant. You have a good eye on the policy side of things. Are there any changes that you'd like to see happen there that would support what you're doing at your farm or others this morning?
Well, there needs to be more support, a stronger support. And I mean, there's an acre scheme and it's closed to any more applications. Like, and even the payment rates in that acre scheme are disappointing, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, for an environmental good that can be achieved, there should be stronger payments for it. Maybe there's more coming in there. The biodiversity loss one is coming again. Like, but there needs to be more support. We're asking farmers to do an awful lot, and they need to be supported in doing that. Like, and the other one then for water quality is the slurry storage. I think slurry storage is a big challenge for farmers, and there isn't enough of it on farms. And there needs to be support for farmers putting that slurry storage, like, you know, stronger support around planning and TAMs. So they're the challenges as I see it.
Okay, Martin, we are pressed for time, so we must move on. But again, congratulations to you and your family and your team down there in Doon.
Thanks very much.
We might have a few minutes at the end to ask some questions. But well done again, and we will keep in touch. So thanks, Martin. So we'll move on to our final farmer and winner who's joining us today. Good morning, James. How are you today?
Mark, hi. Very good. Thank
you. Well, you're very good to join us this morning. Noel, do you want to say anything before James, we hear about James's story?
Yeah, I suppose again, just maybe to give the viewers a feel for what we were looking for with regards to soil, improving soil health is the piece that we're looking at here now. So 1 second, I'll get this going
Yeah,
here.
you can see that there now.
Okay. There you go. Okay. That's the one done. So improving soil health. So again, we had a couple of questions that we were asking farmers to demonstrate that they had you know, a knowledge of the importance of soil health, and we're doing things to improve soil health. And I suppose Ken's quote there, "Feed the soil, not the crop," I think is very apt for this one, you know. And I think that's something that James would have demonstrated quite well from his farm. So look at I suppose very simple. How do you measure or assess soil health in your farm? And I suppose a lot of farmers maybe don't necessarily think about assessing soil, but you know, this is a key part to the soil is a building block for production, and we need to make sure that it's being looked after. So the visual assessments. Have you taken a shovel out and taken a spade and dug a hole just to see what your soil is like, or you know, assess it that way? There's a couple of different tests there. The VEST test is digging a trial pit and looking at the soil structure and the whether there's any lines of compaction and how deep is your topsoil and how deep is your subsoil and the depth of bedrock and depth to water table and so on. And I suppose the cotton underpants test brought many a giggle out of the groups when we were going around. People weren't so sure what that was, but that's, you know, just to check and see how active the microbes are in the soil, and you know, simple things like that. And obviously then you're around your soil samples and soil carbon and organic matter. Are you aware of those being so important, being important to the overall soil health, and how you able to assess those, or have you tested for those? And I suppose then, you know, that's around the knowledge around it, but then what have you knowledge of what would indicate soil health issues? And you know, you're looking at soil structural issues, so you know, from compaction, you know, crop performance, you know, at the headlands and tillage farms, they say that the yields are down because of compaction of the turning. So is there any issues like that on your farm, and discoloration of crop, you know, yellowing of crops and things like that? Or is there capping of soil, you know, things like that? Poor soil fertility is very important to make sure that your crops are productive as well. So them are the kind of the signs that, and weed growth and things like that. So them are the kind of signs that we're looking for that a farmer might come back to us with. And then if you do, what are the measures that have been put in place to protect and improve soil health and, you know, management of soils? And I think the big one here is the prevention is better than cure, and how do you prevent that from happening in the first place? And then if you do have problem areas in your farm, how are you targeting those, and what are the measures you're taking to improve soil health? And then obviously the incorporation of, or the trying to build of organic matter into the soil, straw incorporation and so on, things like that. So they were the kind of the three areas that we're asking farmers to demonstrate their knowledge around soil health. And obviously James did a great job on that, and is doing a great job on it as well at the minute. So those are the kind of things, Mark.
Great, thanks, Noel. Really useful to get that overview of what sorts of things you're looking out for. And look, as I said, it's good advice for people. I'm sure Ken, would be looking at this and screaming at the screen that maybe the biological health as well is probably something that you were looking at as well.
Yes.
James, good morning to you, and thanks for joining us this morning, and congratulations to you and your family on winning the Improving Soil Health and Carbon Sequestration category. We're going to have a brief overview of your farm, and going to get that short video, and we will have a chat after that then. So
James O'Keefe, farming here at Creva, across the Keel, Kells, County Meath, in North Meath. I'm farming here with my wife, Zita, and my mother, Anne-Marie. We have an organic tillage farm here. That's the main part of the farm. It's about 300 acres all up. We're stockless organic. We also farm some miscanthus for animal bedding, growing here behind me. We have a bit of forestry as well. Some of the cereals are grown for food markets, porridge, milling wheat, and maybe some for the distilling industry as well. We're working on that as well at the moment. And then the surplus, which will be the vast majority, will be sold for animal feed directly to farmers. So bringing farmyard manure, chicken litter, slurries. We built a farmyard manure slab specifically to bring those in all year round and compost it there. Miscanthus, growing miscanthus for animal bedding. It's very unique, sequesters carbon. We developed an animal bedding market for at least 10 years ago. It's worked well, and we've since put in more. Big focus on soil health. We're really strong rotation, that's the key here. Diverse rotation with cereals, beans, combi crops, peas and barley, peas and wheat, red clover then as well. It's typically a 6-year rotation, and then we'll always have cover crops in over the winter if we've spring crops to follow to protect the soil, and we'll contract grazing sheep to eat those down and recycle nutrients back into the ground. We have combi crops growing where this different biodiversity can live there rather than just monocultures all the time. Change management of hedgerows. We have a lot of mature trees around the farm. There's waterways all through this farm because we're in a low-lying area, so we have appropriate buffers for those, and we have additional riparian buffers. I suppose recently we put in a PV generation on a shed in the yard for producing electricity to sell to the grid. Do have plans to measure carbon in the farm. I suppose I did a calculation myself a while ago, and it seemed quite positive for the organic farm, and with a little bit of forestry, and we have the miscanthus. Like any farm, you're only minded for a short time, so yeah, definitely would love to be able to hand over to my son Michael, because we're here for about 6 generations, and Michael will be the 7th.
Lovely. That's a beautiful place you have there, James, in Kells, and you're obviously always looking for opportunities to diversify. What interests you in that side of things? You've miscanthus, you've lots of few different crops going on there.
Yeah, there's a bit going on, I suppose. I don't know if I started out with a plan for it to be that way, but it certainly evolved that way. And yeah, it's great to have a few different things going on with different revenue streams. And then obviously in the environmental world, it's great for the environment, just the diversity. And in organic tillage, we have a big focus on that, and diverse cropping and different types of cropping and intercropping. And yeah, lots of diversity.
And James, when you wake up in the morning and you're planning your day or your week, what motivates you to make those changes on your farm towards sustainability?
Oh, I just have a great personal interest in the farm. I suppose having grown up on a farm, it's just in you, I suppose. But yeah, I suppose when I took over the farm about 10, 11 years ago after my dad passed away, suddenly we had a conventional tillage set up. We were selling maybe some of our feed rolled directly to local farmers, and that was fine. But I suppose there were some issues, and profitability was an issue in conventional tillage for a lot of people, and maybe still is. And environmentally as well, the focus was changing nationally and internationally. So I suppose it kind of had a look at all that, and I had learning to do as well. So I got it hard to get passionate about chemical sprays and all these names I couldn't pronounce. It just wasn't my thing. And when I more got into the natural thing and the organic thing, that excited me more, and I found it much more interesting learning about the soil and biodiversity and nature, working with nature rather than trying to kill it with chemicals and whatnot. And in conventional tillage can be a bit more of a focus on that. So as was touched on earlier, I think Ken said and some of the others about feeding the soil and even feeding plants as well, rather than trying to kill diseases and kill aphids and insecticides and herbicides for weeds and things. So it's a different focus, but it's a lot easier to get more passionate about it. So that's kind of what drives me, I suppose.
Very good. Yeah, no, there's no question about that. We have to work with nature. It'll bite us if we don't. I think that's what we've learned over the decades and centuries now at this stage, I think. I see that you put in a bespoke farmyard manure slab on the farm. Can you tell us about what was the reason for that? Obviously, nutrient cycling seems to be a really important part of your operation.
Well, as an organic farmer, I don't use chemical fertilizer, so keeping nutrition up is a big challenge. So I need to import NPK. So I suppose I bring in a lot of farmyard manure and some slurry from local farmers, dairy farmers, beef farmers. And so I built a slab myself so that I could bring it in the winter months and store it, be compliant. You can't store it in a field of that over the winter. And I wanted it on the slab so I could turn it and compost it to get it to break down so that the nutrients were more available. And also a big thing for me is to kill weed seeds. So trying to heat up the compost to over 65 degrees for a number of days to kill weed seeds, because I don't want to import weeds, which I have done one or two, so I don't want any more.
Yeah. So there's a bit of effort in that, but I mean, it's obviously the dividends there are in the availability of the nutrients and like you say, the weed seeds. You're tackling as many of those as possible.
Yeah.
We're a little bit tight on time, but I'm really keen to find out, for you, what would you say were the main challenges that you faced along the journey so far?
I suppose when you're doing different things, there's a few different things going on that maybe there's no pathway from or there's no book to read for everything. So you
Yeah.
take a few risks here and there, but I wouldn't be a risk taker by nature. I'm an engineer as well, so I suppose I'm quite conservative, but I'd research and plan yourself, but not having that go-to on everything. Certainly with Miscanthus and the PV generation that I put in, it wasn't via the TAMS grant. So different sorts of ways. You just have to find your own path. But it's good to take a risk here and there.
And would you like to see better supports from that point of view, better knowledge supports around those types of slightly maybe less popular
Oh, I think it's
enterprises?
coming on the PV side. There's a big push there for that. Miscanthus is a bit more of a niche thing, maybe not so much, but yeah, like I think diversity in general. I think a lot of farms need a bit of diversity, because there's always financial volatility, as we know, in grain and beef and milk world. So it's good to have some diversity on farm to help diversify
very-
income.
Very strong team coming from today. Building that resilience into your system is so important, particularly with weather, but also financial markets. And it's to try to weather those little storms that we seem to be encountering more and more often.
Yeah.
Advice for other farmers. What would you recommend to other farmers across the country?
Um, I suppose I would say a little bit with the same theme, like having changed the farm to organic and done a couple of those other unusual things. Not to be afraid to take a chance, but a calculated risk at that. There's lots of opportunity to do something different, and if you do something different, you can be more of a price maker rather than a price taker, and that's important.
Really, really sound advice there. Yes, and that is something that's been tackled, I suppose, trying to address those supply chain issues. And look, we're on a journey there, as they say. James, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and congratulations to you on the win. And best of luck in the future. So we will leave it at that, James.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. We're at the end. We're slightly over time this morning, but we're towards the end of our session this morning. The next competition is our awards is going to be launched in the new year. It's an awards program that's available to all farmers. It's no special category. You don't have to be a client of Teagasc or anything. Siobhán, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what's coming up in the new year?
Yeah, so we'll be launching again in early January, just like we did last year. So we're delighted that FBD are on board for a couple of years with us. So launching in January. I think closing date for applications is the end of February. That's where it is at the moment. That may change a little bit. So then we go through the process of screening and shortlisting, and then we visit the finalists during the summer. There might be a little bit of a change in the categories that we'll have this year. So one of the things that I mentioned there that came through very strongly was the amount of diversification that's going on in some of these farms.
Yeah.
That's also contributing to improving sustainability, environmental sustainability. So that's one area that may be included. So just keep an eye out, because some of the categories will change this year. But yeah, the application forms will be available from early January.
Right.
And we would encourage as many people as possible to apply. Like it's you can see from the stories there this morning, there's some really inspiring stories. And I think a lot of the farmers would say it's not about getting the recognition for themselves, it's about getting recognition for the industry and what a lot of farmers are doing to improve their sustainability. And I think that's important.
Really, really is truly inspiring, the stories we've heard this morning and what's happening across the country through the various different networks. So congratulations to all of the farmers that were involved, and congratulations to you and your team and the judges for all of the work that was involved. Special thanks to Declan McArdle as well for all of the videos that were produced. It really gives us a step, allows us to step inside the farm gate and see what's happening inside. And thanks to Yvonne Maher as well for helping this morning. Just before we finish up, just to let you know that we'll be joined next week by Professor Owen Fenton from Johnstown Castle, and Wen Son Shi, who's also in Johnstown Castle. And we're going to be talking about environmental research, agri-environmental research that's taking place in East China. So do join us next Friday for that session. So until then, have a good weekend. We're going to play you out with some of the highlights from the Signpost, or the environmental awards. And again, a big thanks to all of the sponsors, FBD, for allowing this to happen. And we wish everyone well with the competition next year. So with that, we'll wish you a good weekend, and we will talk to you next week. Thank you.
And the winner is John and Brandon Walsh.